Hello and welcome to the Moms Who Know podcast. I'm your host, Chanel Nielsen, and my guest today is Marta Spirk. Marta, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Chanel.
Marta has a really unique background. She's originally from Brazil, and she is a mom to 3-year-old triplets, you guys, which is amazing. And she's a certified success coach for moms. She hosts a podcast called Mom Does It All, and that focuses on empowerment for all things motherhood and mompreneurship. And I think that is a very fitting name, Mom Does It All, because with a podcast and a business and 3-year-old triplets, you're doing it all, right?
Yes, I feel like I am doing a lot.
Yes. Well, tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, and specifically, because this is what we're going to dive into today, how you've kind of gotten to know yourself as a mother.
Yeah, so I think it all started really because of my background. I've been teaching English for almost 20 years. I started tutoring English back in Brazil when I was 14 to friends, and it was really an obsession with the American culture and with everything. And I went on to get a bachelor's in translation and then a master's in linguistics. And I was pretty much working as a translator and as a teacher for the longest time. And then after I had the kids, being a stay-at-home mom, I started on this path of coaching, which I had never worked with before, but it made a lot of sense given my background. Especially another thing too is that I grew up in church. My mom is a pastor. So I was very used to interpreting for American pastors and just being in front of crowds, leading worship and all of that. So I've always been very comfortable being in front of people, talking and encouraging and motivating. So it was only natural for me to get into coaching, I feel. It was a little bit of an accident, but I don't really believe in accidents. It was just like, it happened and it was, what I was supposed to be doing. And I feel like this path has really helped me get to know myself better and now help moms that might be in a similar journey do the same.
Awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about how you got into coaching. I'm curious.
Yeah. So I started out, before I got pregnant, I had this dream. I was already following several moms who were like fit moms on Instagram and stuff. And I thought, I want to be a fit mom. I want to, stay active working out because I didn't grow up athletic at all. And then in my 20s, I started going to the gym and I really enjoyed that. And then when I found out it was triplets, that whole idea kind of went out the window because I had to go on bed rest in the remaining 2 months of pregnancy. And as soon as I was cleared, then after I had the babies, I was like, no, I want to be active and I want to lose a baby weight. And then I came across an ad on Facebook for a coaching opportunity through network marketing with Beachbody. And I thought, this is great because I get to do something from home. I get to encourage other women and just share my journey. And then eventually it kind of started changing as I was, trying to find my voice and what I really feel like I am good at, which even though I love health and nutrition, it's not my expertise at all. My expertise is with encouraging, right? And teaching. And so then I started kind of shifting my focus to then helping moms with their business. And now I really see myself just encouraging and motivating moms in general to find they're happy as moms.
I love it. Okay. I feel like this topic comes up again and again for moms, that they have to find themselves, that they have to figure out. It's such a process of navigation of, you feel like kind of, who you are. And by the time you have a baby, you're getting through this young adult phase maybe, and you kind of have an idea of who you are. And then when you become a mother, you have to rediscover that all over again. Yeah. So let's go here then. Why do you feel like it's important for moms to know who they really are? Like, how do they get there?
I feel like that is important for anybody. And honestly, most people don't really figure out their potential and what they really want to do with life, period. But I feel like once we become moms, that's a huge opportunity for us to go there. But most of us don't because, we get overwhelmed with taking care of many other people's needs and everything. But I feel like that's something so important because as you might feel like it's a selfish thing, but I really truly believe that that's selfless because the more you get to know yourself, the more you can teach your kids how to hone in on their strengths and on their expertises. And this is what I have been noticing even with my kids being born the same day, they're all very different. And I mean, obviously, they're getting the same parenting and everything, but they already have an essence to them. And I believe we all do when we're born. And then with time, we put on different layers because of, we live in different cities, we go to different schools, we meet different people, and we kind of lose that with time. And I feel like with motherhood, that happens even more intensely because you are responsible for other kids and other people's needs more so than ever. And that's where it's even more important for you to get back to that essence, get back to who you were when you were a little kid and when you had dreams and when you were innocent and no one was really necessarily telling you what to do or who to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. So basically you're saying we come to earth, however,
yes.
whatever your belief system is, knowing who we are. And then it's the influences that kind of get heaped on us.
Yes, exactly.
We have to shed those and get rid of those. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, it's not anyone's fault. I always like to say that because there's a lot of trauma with, when you go back and look into your past, there's lots of grudges potentially and regrets and things like that. But all of my work is to help women look back into their past, to figure out the source of their beliefs and the stories and the things that they have been holding on to, not to hold grief, but to actually have gratitude for those things and understand the patterns that they have held on to for so many years so that they can decide, does this serve me or does this not serve me? And just let go of it. Because sometimes we just think, no, this is generational. This is how my family is. So this is who I am. And that's not true. As an adult, and especially as a parent, you get to choose how your life is going to be and what you're going to pass along. And when you realize that power that you have, everything changes.
Definitely. Okay. So as you're talking, I'm trying to think about what does this mean for me? Like, what are the things that I'm carrying around that I don't even know that I'm carrying around? And I bet you see that a lot. How do you work with women to help them become more aware of these things that they're holding on to? Because we don't see it, right? We don't even know.
Exactly. Because most of our lives, we live on autopilot. We have this thing that we've become, and it's just what we do. We go through the motions. And my invitation and my challenge to moms really is to not live on autopilot and be very aware. So I love that you use that word because that's the very first step that I encourage women to go through is through a process of self-discovery to develop self-awareness. And the way you do that really is going back into your past. And what I like to have women do is to think back to the female role models that they've had. So the most influential women in their lives, whether they were family or friends, and think back to how their lives were and what they believed in and the message that they, showed, whether, spoken or unspoken. And then you will notice so many patterns. We go through a process and we look at different areas of that person's lives. And then you start noticing similarities. And then that's when you see, oh, wow, this is why I think like this about my health. Or this is why my relationships are X, Y, and Z, because I am mirroring what my mom did or somebody else, and then you start noticing it doesn't have to be like this. And most times you start thinking, this is what I never wanted it to be like. And I feel like that comes up a lot when we become moms, because when we're growing up, there are certain things that we don't agree with our parents or maybe other family members. And we're like, when I am a mom, I'm not going to do this. And then you find yourself in certain patterns because that's what you learned, right? And this is the perfect opportunity for you to start making changes and realize that you are not defined by your past. Your past is a part of you, but then you can decide if you're going to continue on with some certain things or not.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting because it's so subconscious. It's in our subconscious where we don't know. I'm thinking of my mom. She used to always, and maybe she still does, I don't know, but when she would cook and when the house would be quiet and she'd just kind of be in her own little world stirring a pot and she would sing this song while she was doing it. And sometimes when I'm in the kitchen I find myself just singing this song
Oh,
and I'll laugh
wow.
at myself and I'll say, oh my gosh, like I totally picked this up from my mom. This is something that she did. And it's not like I'm consciously thinking, oh, you need to sing. It's actually a
Right.
Christmas song. You need to sing this song while you're cooking.
Right.
No, it's just in my mind, and we pick these things up. So that's an interesting process to go back and to look at that specifically and to really be, have your eyes opened to the things that are already there, those programs that are already running in our mind that we're not aware of. So is there more to this process of self-discovery or more that you can tell us about, things that you work with your clients to figure this out?
Yeah. So at first we go through this process to develop this self-awareness, and it really is digging back into your past. But like I said, not to dwell in it, but actually to understand yourself better. And I really love this process because it helps you with developing gratitude for those people in your life, whether you start finding things that you don't agree with or not. And I feel like this has helped me be so much more grateful for my mom. As a mom, even just being a mom, I understand certain things that I didn't before, but going through this process, I'm like, oh my gosh, my mom did amazing. It really helps you see that people work from with what they have, right? Everyone does what they have. And it really helps, release all, the hurt and grudges, like I was saying. But the next step that I help women go through is a process of self-empowerment. So it's not only for you to look at that, the dark hidden secrets, but for you to start celebrating the good things that you have about you. And then you also get that from the past, but also from the present, into looking at the things that you have already accomplished. Because we see a lot about gratitude nowadays to say, you have to start your day with gratitude and keep a gratitude journal. And one of the things that I have incorporated that I learned with one of my mentors and that I encourage my clients to do is to keep a brag book. Because usually when you do a gratitude journal, you're probably not going to be in it. You're going to be grateful for people. You're going to be grateful for things, right? You're not going to say, I'm grateful for myself. Usually you won't. But when you do a brag book, you're forced to think of the things that you're proud of yourself, right? So I am really proud of making through the day with triplets, or it can be anything big, or it can be anything small or anything big. Like I did laundry today, finally, or, I completed my master's, or I am studying, or whatever it is that you're doing. And that builds so much confidence because especially as women and as moms, we seek for external validation a lot. We want others to tell us that we're doing a good job. And unfortunately, the job that we have is not a conventional job, right? That you go and your boss tells you what you need to do and you finish a project and he congratulates you or tells you that you did a good job. And with us moms, I feel like no matter how many times our husbands say that we're doing a good job or our kids thank us, we're always feeling like we haven't done enough, that we could be doing more. There's a lot of guilt. And when you learn to create this validation yourself, everything changes again because you're not expecting it from somebody else. It's really hard to expect something that will never come. Because even when people validate you, if you, at the end of the day, don't accept yourself, don't love yourself, it doesn't matter how many compliments you get, that won't fill you up. So it has to come from within. So that's another thing that we go through as well.
Oh, I love that. And I think it's just so good because exactly, if you don't believe it, then what happens is when someone tells you, gives you that validation or that compliment, you're like, no.
Exactly.
No, not true. And so if you are working on that, and I love this idea actually of keeping a brag book, and it could even be incorporated with your regular gratitude practice. Yeah. I'm thankful for my kids. I'm thankful for this. And I'm thankful that I made an awesome dinner. I am such a good cook or whatever.
Yes.
So I want to share this quick experience that I had just today that goes along with this. So just talking about building confidence and feeling proud. My daughter is 15 and a half, and so she is learning to drive. And yesterday, for the first time, she drove on the freeway with the driving instructor. I had not been brave enough to do that with her yet, but the instructor took her, and she was so proud of herself. And then today, I needed to go to the store, and she said, "Can I drive you?" And it about a half hour away on the freeway. And I said, okay. And she drove me all the way and she was on cloud nine. She
Aw.
just was soaring. And it just goes along. I just thought of it because when you're talking about building confidence, when you recognize the good things that you do and you recognize that you have accomplished something, then you have that confidence.
Yes.
She's feeling like, man, I am a good driver, and she is. She's doing great. But we need that as moms too. We need to acknowledge, take the time, stop and acknowledge, I did something good.
Yes, totally. Yeah. And I love that you said that you create this confidence, because this is another thing that I want to emphasize in everything that I do is that you create your reality. And we forget that, right? We forget that we create our feelings. Whenever we think of something sad, automatically we start creating sad emotions. When we think of something happy, automatically we start creating those things. Like nobody does that to us. So many times we think that people cause us to feel miserable or cause us to feel a certain way, and they can, but it's only because you allow them to. It all starts with you, right? So if you want to have a happier life or feel more fulfilled, it won't come from the outside because it will be short-lived. So the whole idea is to have that start with you. And how beautiful is it when you master this to teach that to your kids?
Definitely, because this is a skill we all need to know. And if our kids can learn that when they're young, then that's just going to serve them, hopefully they'll have a smooth transition, smoother anyway, into adulthood. So this is awesome. Okay. So I love these ideas and this whole concept of self-discovery, of learning who you are and of really going deep into that process. But we're talking about kind of, making changes in our lives, figuring out who we are. Before you really shift your life and make those changes, you kind of need to see what's not working.
Exactly.
And how do you take a look at your life and actually recognize what's not working?
Yeah. So it's all going back to that process of the thought patterns, right? Of the self-sabotage is what I love to use that word, because like you said before, it's usually something involuntary, unconscious, right? That we're not aware of, that we don't even know we're doing, or sometimes we kind of do, but we don't know the source. So that's important too, because, usually when we talk about self-sabotage, that's a word that's very used in dieting and in health. It's like, oh, I ate healthy all day and then at night I ate a bunch of cookies. And it's like, why do I do this to myself? And if you don't go through the source, and usually the source is emotional, right? Even when we talk about overeating, if you don't go through that source, you're not going to be able to make changes. So becoming aware is super important, but finding the source is super important as well. And it really goes back to your childhood. There's so many studies out there that show this, that, it's what you heard when you were growing up about something that just gets stuck with you, and you carry it over with you and you don't even realize it. So that's why paying attention to other people's lives that were influential to you is so eye-opening, because it's a lot easier to pinpoint things in others, especially when you talk about faults, right? Oh, my mom used to do this all the time. Like, you remember these things. You don't necessarily remember you growing up. Maybe some people do in more detail than others, but it's a lot easier to remember what others did to you, right? Or were doing around you. And so that really is really powerful, because that's when you understand where things come from, and also understand that that's not you. It's not your identity. And it's not to say that it's those people identities either, because they have a story. And that's where the whole aspect of gratitude and forgiveness comes in, because even if you find something terrible that somebody did to you, then that's the source of whatever it is that you're carrying right now. You start understanding, wow, something probably happened to them for them to do that to me, or for them to carry that with them. And you're like, it's really not their fault. It's just they carried that with them. They didn't know any better to change that. And I always love to use a Tony Robbins documentary that I watched on Netflix. And I love Tony Robbins. He talks to people in the audience. And I remember in this specific documentary, he talked to this one girl, and she said she had an abusive dad, alcoholic, drug addict. And then he started talking to her and started realizing the things that she has developed because of him. And then she talked to a different woman that said, my dad was amazing. He treated me the best. He's the best man in the world. But she was having trouble with her marriage. I think she had gone through a divorce. And he kind of helped both of these ladies see, even though one had a good role model and the other one had a bad role model, that both of them created certain expectations or certain behaviors in those daughters, not necessarily positive and not necessarily negative either. It's just affected them in a way that affected their relationships afterwards. But it wasn't until he, opened that up that they were like, oh my gosh, this is totally true. So that is to say, you might find something negative in your past, and you might find something positive in your past, but it's not for you to dwell on that, but really to just find that source so that you can then make the decisions on your own. And it's not going to be, overnight, obviously. I like to say that whenever you start setting goals for yourself, all of these, the self-sabotage is going to come back. It's going to creep in because it's been with you for so long, but you're going to be able to stop yourself in your tracks and make a conscious decision. So it's daily work. I saw a quote one day that said, work on your happiness like it's a full-time job, because it really is. It's not something that you decide one day and then tomorrow you don't have to decide. It's throughout the day. You have to keep reminding yourself. And that's why mindfulness is so important. And it's a huge part of this process.
Oh, so good. Okay. There's so much good stuff in there that you just shared with us. I love the concept of daily work. I love this concept of stopping yourself in the moment. And I think that's so good because, I've talked before on the show about the pause. If you can have this little pause before you act, and this knowledge, if you do this work and you see, what's causing behaviors in your life, and you recognize, oh, that's coming from my past. And when you start to get into that behavior, you go, oh, wait, this is because of, a teacher that I had that treated me like this. You recognize, and then you pause, and then you get to choose something different. Exactly. You don't have to choose that same thing.
Because it's all about not being in the autopilot. When you notice that, then you have that choice. It's not just going through the motions. It's you being like, why am I reacting like this? And this is helpful for any situation, even when you're, getting overwhelmed with your kids and you're screaming. And if you just notice that you're getting, that the situation's getting out of hand, and you notice that you're in control, because you're setting the tone, the emotional tone for the situation. And most instances with kids, it's the parent, right? Then you can be like, whoa, hold on. Why am I reacting like this? If you can understand your reactions to things, then you can change the outcome of many situations.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I think there are so many applications here to motherhood and, really to our lives as women. Talk to us a little bit about how all that we've talked about today, this process of self-discovery, will change us specifically as moms.
So the biggest thing really is, like I said, letting go of external validation to be who you are. Because for so long, we depend on others. I mean, this has been women's role for decades and years, right? Depending on others to tell us what to do or who to be. And of course, things are changing right now. And I always like to use social media as an example, because even though we have a lot more freedom as women now, we fall into the comparisonitis again when we look at social media and we see these perfect pictures and we see these perfect bodies and perfect families, and we feel like our lives suck. The grass is always greener on the other side. And so this process really helps you see the beauty in your life. And there is a quote that I love so much that I found on Pinterest not too long ago that says, "To my daughter, I will say, see your beauty without a compliment, without a mirror." And this is something that I feel like we should be telling our little girl inside, because we are all still that little girl. She's in there somewhere, right? And this is what this whole process is. It's going back to that little girl. And I started reading this book not too long ago that's on self-love. It's called The ABCs of Self-Love. And the very first part of the book, she encourages us to get a picture from when you were little, smiling, and look at that little girl and put it on the screen of your phone to look at that girl, and don't forget her, and think back to, who you used to be and how would you talk to her what would you say to her, thinking, especially if you have a daughter, I think these feelings are even stronger, with me having a daughter, and I imagine for you as well. Like, you wouldn't want to beat her, down and bring her down. I mean, you wouldn't want her to feel like she's ugly, like she's worthless, like she doesn't do anything right. You would encourage her. You would tell her, you're doing an amazing job. You're beautiful just the way you are, right? And this is what we should be telling ourselves. And so I feel like we forget that, again, because we're taking care of everybody else, but it really, really needs to start with us. Because if you're not feeling like this about yourself, how can you even love someone like this? You know what I mean? If you don't really love yourself, and to love yourself, you have to know yourself. So that's why this process is so important. You can't really extend this love to anybody else.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love that imagery. I think that's good for all of us to think about, and just to be good to ourselves in the way we think. Well, this has been such a good conversation. And really, I think you are just, doing what you set out to do, which is encourage moms. I feel so much encouragement from this conversation. Tell people where they can find you and get more.
Yeah, so you can find me across the board as Mom Does It All. So that's the name of the podcast, and that's the name of my 2 accounts on Instagram. I have an account for the podcast on Instagram as well. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only Marta Spirk out there too. So Marta Spirk on Facebook. I do have a private group on Facebook for any woman that wants to join. You don't even have to be a mom. It's called Mom Does It All Community. And my website is martaspirk.coach.
All right. We'll link to all that and make sure that everyone has access to that. Marta, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to Moms Who Know. That was such a fun episode with Marta. So many good things in there that it was actually really hard for me to pull out a podcast discussion question of the week this week, because there were so many different things that it got me thinking about, and I'm sure it got you thinking about as well. So what I finally decided on for our discussion question is this: who are you thankful for? She talked a little bit about developing gratitude for people in your life, and we all have so many people in our lives to be grateful for. So I want to know, who are you thankful for and why? Thinking about that is powerful. Sharing that is even more powerful. What I would love is if you shared it with that person, and I'd love it even more if you shared it on Instagram or Facebook and tagged them so that both they and I can see who you are thankful for. You can do that on social media at Moms Who Know Podcast on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll see you next week on Moms Who Know.